chance. Sure.
Okay, hi everyone, I'm Steph, I'm the chair. By my pronouns, you can she, her, Madam Speaker, Madam Chair. Start with OG.
And just first, he.
First speaking second, he.
Oh,
After speaking first, right speaking second. Then speaking first, I'm speaking second.
Right speaking face, prepared pronoun they. Next time, prepared pronouns he, him, they.
I'm still not seeing the message, so if he's not here by the time I do the ballot on the slide, it's not.
I suspect that the list or the words there may be really intense.
Is it on or off?
Hello?
Sorry. Okay.
I mean, look at the student who made his
Okay, let's get started. The Prime Minister to begin the debate. Up.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
That is in technical planning. Okay, what order are you guys making?
Take the plan.
You guys the bus.
I feel like 2 hours late.
Like 1 hour later.
Okay, let's actually get started.
We have tried for too long to get people to forget that these people are disabled, that these disabilities exist for them and that they cripple them or impair their abilities to perform some functions in certain ways. We think that the disability rights movement, in order to push for the disabled to become more integrated within society and to be accepted within society, should aim to therefore embrace rather than reject inspiration porn. 4 things in this speech. Firstly, we're going to talk about the problems that disabled people currently face within society. We're then going to look at what inspiration porn does, and we're going to look at the impact that these people, that inspiration porn will have on the way in which society perceives these disabled people and tries to help these disabled people. Finally, we're going to look at why the comparative on opposition is just not likely to work. Before that, the disability rights movement is trying to fight for. So policies that we think the disability rights movement are trying to fight for are things like having anti-workplace discrimination laws in place for these disabled people. Things like, for instance, ensuring that they have fair hiring and firing policies when it comes to disabled people to ensure that they're not fired arbitrarily on the basis of their disabilities, but also things like building infrastructure to help these disabled people get around the workplace or more generally within society. We think that within broader society, it also includes things like just changing the way in which these people are able to get around society, but also how they are being perceived more. What do we mean by inspiration porn then? We're talking about things like a blind man being shown being able to do a triathlon, for instance. We're talking about a blind and deaf lawyer, for instance, being able to represent someone in court. No, thank you. We're talking about things like a girl who has no legs being given bionic legs and being able to perform normal bodily normal functions in society as well. The reason that these forms of inspiration porn are considered inspiring is because we show that the disabled people are capable of doing things on the same level as human beings who are not disabled, but also being able to achieve things that we ourselves would consider to be phenomenal, or the things that are great as well. Therefore, from opening government, our narrative is very simple. Firstly, we want to establish that these disabled people do in fact need help from the rest of society. But secondly, that we want to establish that given this help, they are going to be able to achieve, no thank you, the same level of things or even greater things that us non-disabled human beings are going to be able to do. So firstly, therefore, no thank you, the current status quo for disabled people currently is. The first thing that we would like to point out is that their disability does in fact exist. But more importantly, the reality for them is that, no thank you, they are constantly being reminded in society that they are disabled. Because what happens in society is that it has constructed itself on the basis of a privilege of not being disabled. That the way in which society has constructed infrastructure and institutions is to privilege those who are not being disabled. So for instance, no thank you, we think what happens in society, no thank you, is that we build infrastructure that doesn't have ramps, for instance, so people who are wheelchair bound are never going to be able to go up into a building, for instance. We don't have lifts in a very large majority of in many parts of society, which means that these people are not being able to get around their workplace easily. Importantly, we think that there's also a prevailing perception amongst the majority of society that these people are disabled and therefore will not be able to achieve the same level of things as us who are not, as people who are not disabled. Right? The majority of society currently believe, no thank you, that because these people are in fact disabled, they're not going to be able to achieve whatever ordinary people or non-disabled people are going to be achieving. It is an absolute liberal minority, no thank you, who can afford to try and be blind to the fact that they have this privilege. But the reality is that for the majority of society, these things still happen. Why is this a problem? Because we think what happens in society is that as long as we are acutely aware of this, but we don't change, no thank you, the way in which we organize our society or the way, the sort of infrastructure that we build for these people, we're never going to be able to help these disabled people in there. What does inspiration porn then do? The first thing that it does is that it reminds the rest of society that there are, in fact, some limits to the capabilities of these disabled people as a consequence of their disabilities. I'll take you in a moment. But importantly, that these limits are not intrinsic. They are a function of the fact that these disabilities exist. And if we give them help, they are going to be able to overcome these limits. Before I move on, yes?
For 30 minutes of speech, but only goes so far to prove that we should report more in general on the existence of disability and disabled problems, not the fact that these people not proving the motion in any sense whatsoever. So can you prove the motion now?
Yeah, we're proving why this thing is important, but also that using inspiration porn, as we're going to prove now, is the only mechanism by which we are going to be able to achieve those outcomes. So, as we say, inspiration porn already reminds the rest of society that there are limits on their capabilities, but they're not intrinsic. We think that this is analogous to things like helping females, for instance, or helping African Americans in society. Because we want society to be acutely aware of their privilege or disprivilege, and also to recognize that if we change no thank you, right, given 2 and 10 seconds, they are going to be able to help these individuals as well. Importantly, where do we think this inspiration point is going to be posted? It's going to be placed on things like your train, for instance. It's going to be placed at your workplace, for instance. We're going to show this in every possible instance that a common person might be able to look at this inspiration point. And the reason that this is important is because we then show that we remind them that even in the most, what we will consider the most common of places or the most ordinary of circumstances, disabled people do in fact have limitations, no thank you, even there, and that therefore we need to have some changes in there. What is the impact of this? 2. The first is that disabled people themselves know that they are going to be able to achieve things, that they don't feel like these are limitations because they will internalize that these are limitations that are intrinsic to them, but we tell them that they are always going to be able to achieve good things as long as society is going to help. But more importantly, we think that what this does is change the way in which the rest of society perceives them. The first way it does is that it changes the nature of the interactions that we have with disabled people. We're more likely to reach out to them. We're more likely to help them. On an organizational level or within your own a social group, what happens when a policy comes up that tries to give build a ramp to help wheelchair people or to make it accessible to disabled people is that we don't oppose them. We're more likely to support them. This also creates political capital in society because when certain organizations try to say that these sort of anti-workplace discrimination laws try to kind of impose on our ability to make profits, more people are likely to be galvanized to oppose these sort of rhetoric and to support the fact that these things, that we ought to have these things in society. We think that the comparative on their side of the house, by not highlighting with disabilities is that we never get these forms of things of good outcomes. We never get these sort of policies being imposed. We think that that's a bad thing for disabilities and counters the disability rights movement. For all these reasons, we're very, very proud to propose.
Thank you, and now I invite the opposition leader.
We agree that the problem is ableism, but the worst way we can reinforce the ableist mindset of society is to have patronizing feel-good videos that celebrate the disabled doing what is for most people very basic tasks, like walking and functioning normally as human beings. What is our stance? First of all, the disability rights movement should actively reject the advent of inspiration porn, feel-good self-pleasure videos that celebrate the activity of disabled people to do, in the vast majority of cases, what are purely ordinary tasks. We think it's all right to celebrate the individual achievements of disabled members of the community, so long as the celebration does not focus excessively on that disability or define people on the basis of that disability. Last of all, as closing highlighted, we're very happy to have things like more information about disabilities, to tell the public what are the challenges that disabled people face, so long as we don't define disabled people on the basis of that disability. Two arguments. First of all, that this is offensive to the disabled. Second of all, that this is regressive of the disability rights movement. But before that, some rebuttal. They said, we think that we need to move forward in terms of the current state of disability rights. A number of responses. We think that currently, the problem that the disability rights movement is facing is not that they don't have political capital to do things like allow for more access, or campaign for things like wheelchair ramps. What they need is a change in mindset, a mindset in society that strictly bifurcates and creates a cleavage between the able and the disabled. We think that by creating videos that specifically reinforce that disabled people are different and are less capable of doing ordinary tasks or even tasks like competing in sports because of their disability, you reinforce this strict bifurcation between the able and the disabled. More on this later. So we think that showing that disabled people are different and experience life differently creates and reinforces the mentality that they are different. Like they said, inspiration porn can sometimes highlight huge successes like completing a triathlon, for instance. We think that yes, this highlights the fact that disabled people can be outstanding in some instances, but the darker implication of this is that most disabled people are not able to lead this kind of normal life, and this worsens the patronizing mentality against disabled people. More on this later. First argument, that this is offensive to the disabled. We think it's highly undignifying to disabled people for society at large to define them on the basis of their disability. There are three reasons why videos, in particular videos framed as inspiration porn, are particularly offensive. First of all, it makes the subject of this person's life their struggle with disability. We think that while people like Nick Vujovic like to center their personal narrative around disability, the vast majority of disabled people don't like being reminded of the fact that they are disabled and they have to overcome this huge barrier to success. And this is not the narrative we should feed them as society. We think this mentality is a product of an ableist society which will potentially treat them as different if they acknowledge and are defined by the fact that they are disabled. So we think that given the vast majority of disabled people don't want to be defined by their disability, we should respect their wishes and not imply that a disabled person's life is solely defined by his struggle against this condition he has. So thank you. So we think that it's incredibly important for us not to have videos that define a person's personal struggles or personal narrative on the basis of his disability. Secondly, we also think it's incredibly patronizing and as a consequence quite offensive. Often, the way these ads are framed suggests that the disabled experience massive difficulty completing even basic tasks, like walking, for instance. Whether or not this is true, this encourages the patronizing attitude of ableist society that the disabled are incompetent, that they are different from us, that we need special protections for them, and they have difficulty completing even the most basic of tasks. This is not a message we want to send, because in an age where infrastructure to guarantee things like wheelchair access, for example, is relatively widespread, or there's political capital for it, even if it doesn't exist. This is not a message we want to send, because what we want to send the message that a deaf person or a person with dwarfism is equally capable of success and equally capable as a human being to start off with the same footing as a normal person. What is important is that we stress that there's a commonality in the human experiences between the disabled and the able, and not stress the fact that they're strictly bifurcated on the basis of their disability. Last of all, we also think that in some way these videos are objectifying. The focus of many of these videos, especially the way they are framed by corporate sponsors, is that they are framed as a feel-good self kind of video to elicit a certain kind of feel-good response in people. This is similar to the heartwarming videos of published of like African children receiving food aid and being happy. So this deals directly with the point that this will encourage people to check their privilege, because often the objective and the outcome of these videos is not to encourage people to check their privilege and realize that they are privileged with regard to disabled people, but to make people feel good and feel that something is being done to satiate their moral guilt. We think that showing that disabled people can already receive help and can already receive benefits, like bionic legs, for example, actually satiates their moral desire to do more things and assuages their fears that disabled people are being treated differently, even if they did care about the disabled in the first place. So we think that what they might do is actually encourage a kind of strange inaction as people's moral guilt and their consciences are satiated. Yes.
Right, so the Paralympics and the way they're currently advertised, do you guys support that? Actually, I guess what I'm asking is, what do you support?
Okay, we don't support the fact that the Paralympics athletes are defined on the basis of their disability. Like, we don't support the fact that excessive attention is placed on the fact they can succeed in light of their disability. What we do support is a portrayal that they can succeed as athletes, as human beings, in spite of these disabilities, without defining them on the basis of their condition. Okay, so we think that what they do is actually encourage more inaction and more excessive apathy from the public. But more on this, my second argument about how this is regressive for the disability rights movement. We think that the disability rights movement has come a long way since its beginnings in the early 20th century. We have largely created the perception that disabled people are equally deserving of employment opportunities and access opportunities as normal people. Like the ADA has enforced some kind of legally actionable anti-discrimination laws. The China Disabled Persons Federation has granted wheelchair access to almost all public buildings in big cities in China under Deng Fang. So what we think is that the current barrier faced by the disabled rights movement is that they need to combat the perception that there is a cleavage in society between what the able and the disabled are able to function and the value they are able to bring to the economy. When the inspiration point and the excessive promulgation of this regresses the perception and the discourse around disabled people. Why is that so? First of all, it makes people like employers more wary of them, because it draws attention to the fact that they are disabled and they experience a large amount of difficulty and have to overcome a huge amount of hindrance before they can perform basic tasks. Therefore, this makes employers more likely to be wary of people like them. The consequence of this is that this regresses a large amount of anti-discrimination legislation that has been put into place. Moreover, we think this changes the dialogue about disability to how do we help these people live normally in our society, rather than how we grant them the important legal protections that they need. So we think this is inherently aggressive, because not only does this encourage inaction, but it changes the dialogue to a more patronizing level that we have already reached as a society prior to this. So we think that this is incredibly, hugely regressive for the disability rights movement, because it treats these disabled people as not being able to complete basic tasks. Why this is incredibly offensive, and even on that alone, this also hinders the progress of the disability rights movement that we have worked so hard for in the past 50 years. We're very proud to stand in opening off.
Thank you, and the deputy president.
Perhaps in the socio-economically privileged liberal bubble that opening opposition lives in, disabled people already achieved all of these wonderful things. For the rest of us, plebes who live in broader society, disabled people face huge barriers to being like able to actualize themselves, to be able to access even the most basic services in society. But I argue that it goes beyond that. First thing, what exactly are we comparing? The clash, as we've correctly identified, is whether we want to highlight disability and the progress in spite of it, or to merely highlight progress without highlighting the disability. Which leads me to the next question, right? What exactly is the alternative of opening opposition? For example, if you were the Association for the Visually Handicapped and you needed to raise funds for charity and to fund your programs, what exactly is the narrative you're going to try to sell to these people, right? The fact is you are an organization trying to help people who are disadvantaged in society, so you've got to make some reference to that. And you've got to make some reference to the disabilities and the difficulties they have living in society. You're not going to be able to run away from that. So if you can't remove that bit, are you just going to remove the inspiration bit? Because then that seems to imply that we're going to revert to the status quo of, oh, look at these pitiful people. We need them to ensure that they can do the most basic functions in society. Please donate to us. That's nonsense, right? Like, given the fact that we can't change the one, at the very least, let's elevate the position of disabled people in society by showing what they can do. Not only in terms of basic services, but the fact that they can be lawyers, but the fact that they can be triathletes, the fact that they can be Oscar Pistorius, minus the girlfriend killing bit, right? Secondly, how do most people feel about disabled people in society? There are three main problems with how most people, the rest of us plebes, feel about disabled people in society. First of which is some people are merely ignorant of this disability. The fact is, they're invisible, right? You don't see blind people walking around on a daily basis. You don't see people in wheelchairs walking around on a daily basis unless they're like 80 years old, right? You don't see most of these things happening. So quite obviously, like, it is very easy for us to just live within our bubbles and pretend that the problem doesn't exist. Or if it exists, it's abstract, like poor people dying in Africa, right? Very abstract stuff. Occasional donations are going to go some way to solving it, but we don't really have to do anything more than just throw our money during the annual charity fest. That's something that we solve through inspiration porn, because we make sure that the lives of these people are personal, that we show you exactly their names, their faces, their life stories, that you can connect to them and be proud of them on a day-to-day basis. No, thank you. When we plaster their names on television screens, like on your pamphlets when you apply to universities, or like, for example, on the internet, right, sharing inspirational stories and all that stuff. The second problem that they face is the ignorance of how difficult these people's lives are. Let's be real, these they have great difficulty, even performing the most basic functions, walking around, seeing stuff, finding their way around streets. Part of it is natural, but the bulk of it is our fault, actually, and that's why I want to remind them of our privilege. It's not really saying, oh, I'm so sorry, nature has dealt you a bad hand. We are complicit in creating a society where we cannot cross roads because there are no tactile signs for the rest of us to cross. We are complicit because we don't design lifts with disabled people in mind. All of this privilege, or the bulk of it, is man-made. That is exactly why we need to highlight disability, because it is the one way in which people realize, shit, it's our fault, we've got to do something about it. Sit down. The last thing I want to talk about is prejudice, right? And the prevailing prejudice is that despite your supposed campaign to say, oh, disabled people can do normal things too, a lot of people still don't get the message, regardless of whether you are a developed or developing country, for the same reasons I mentioned, that disabled people just can't do stuff. That is the reason why people make headlines when they say blind deaf lawyer can do legal work and represent people in court. That's why when Oscar Pistorius or Dr. William Lee can race in official Olympic level races, you're like, wow, they can actually do that. And Oscar Pistorius didn't just win the Olympics. He was at some point very close to competing amongst the very top runners in the non-disabled category. And that is precisely the reason why these stories are so important. Because they are the exceptions to the norm. And we need to remind people of it, because it's not what you see on a daily basis when I walk past my neighborhood and see the Singapore Association for Visually Handicapped People. And all they're teaching them to do is make, decorations and stuff, right? We've got to be able to give them something more in society before I move on. Maketab.
African Americans face structural barriers like increased chances to getting arrested and convicted. Should we celebrate every black person who makes it through life without getting arrested and convicted?
Yes, actually. Yeah, we're going to highlight the best of these people, and we're going to say, yes, that's right. They managed to avoid all of these things, and managed to avoid all of the structural disprivilege that we created for them. They went to fucking Harvard University and got themselves a degree. That's what we're going to do. We do the same for Malays in Singapore, because trust me, we get better off in society. Next thing. Even in your liberal bubble, right, where we will try to pretend it doesn't exist, like we don't have to go through all of the fighting against ignorance and disprivilege, ignorance and prejudice bit. I've already told you about why there is immense amounts of pity in society, right? The way all of these campaigns are designed it is a pity, empathy, and therefore, we're going to donate and help them in the best way possible. But it's not just money that we need, guys. It's the fact that when your company says, shit, we need to upgrade the lifts, everyone's going to have to take the stairs for 1 year because we want to make the lifts bigger so that your disabled lawyer employee can wheel his wheelchair into the lift. Or when we have to invest $7,000 into a braille reader so the guy who you're going to employ who's blind can do legal work, you're not going to say, shit, it's a real inconvenience, because that entails a far greater sacrifice than simply donating your money every year. And that is why we need these campaigns, to show you that without these things, they are fucked. With these things, however, they can compete with the very best in your society. That's the marginal difference. It's a huge difference with a $7,000 investment. That is why these campaigns are important, because we need to highlight just how much the infrastructural investment can aid them. Not just to be normal, but to be great. The last thing I want to talk about is how far have we progressed in helping disabled people, right? So the reality is, even if we accept the characterization of opening opposition, that the guys, with at the very least in the best parts of the United States, in lovely San Fran or New York, maybe the disabled people can now get along with the rest of society in a normal fashion. But in the same way that African American empowerment was not merely about civil rights, voting rights, and fighting slavery, or how feminism was not merely about making sure they won't discriminate fundamentally at every level. We want to break glass ceilings. We want to make sure that not only are these people capable of doing normal things, that they are capable of doing great things, and we want to emphasize that narrative, right? So even if we do have a black lawyer, we don't just want him to be a black lawyer. Even if we have a disabled lawyer, we don't just want him to be a disabled lawyer. He's going to make senior partner, and that is not going to be possible if we don't highlight stories like his and overcome the discrimination that happens not only at the lower levels, but at the higher levels where there is ingrained resistance to the idea that disabled people can do great things. To paraphrase a certain favorite figure of mine, let's make disabled people great again.
Okay, this concludes the urgent call from MIDP later on.
I think at this point we're running the risk of parallel cases. If government is going to come on and tell us that we're going to celebrate, only celebrate the success stories that people become lawyers or people who become the most exceptional in their fields. I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about what inspiration porn really is like, how it spreads on social media, what is the nature of the images that we use, whether it's really the kind of, full of names, full of stories that government tries to characterize inspiration porn as. If I disprove their characterization, then all their ideas about how we integrate disabled people better into society falls. So here's what inspiration porn exactly is like. It's our brief attempt at empathy on social media. And let's face it, humans really love to try to believe that they are good people. We really love to believe that we have done something in our lives, donate $1 into a can, and we think we are the best person of the day. And that's why we often like to appeal to the most banal, the most base, and the most primal. We like to see an African kid starving and donate $5 feeling like we have changed his life. We like to go onto social media just to click a like as a means of trying to spread the message and increasing awareness. We really aren't caring about the cause at all. You see, inspiration porn is a race to the bottom. It's not about celebrating the people at the top. As they put it, perhaps in the information slide or even in the definitions, it's about celebrating people who do the most basic of things to overcome their disabilities. But here's where it goes conditions. Because it's not just about that one image. It's about how you see the rest of that community. If you are celebrating an inspirational figure as someone who is able to pick up a pen because of his disability, what does it say about everyone else? It says that it's something so hard to achieve. It says that the community at large find it very difficult to even take that first step. So don't let them lie to you. Don't let them say that it means that everyone is able to do it, because that's not what inspiration is. Inspiration is an exception, and if they are making the most basic of things an exception, we don't believe that that at all allows us to integrate them into society. They fetishize disability, they put it, like you saw, away from the mainstream. We believe this is terrible. Let's face it. When we go online, no one really reads the names and stories of people with disabilities. We just see a quote on the picture, like try and try harder before you can achieve your dreams. Come on, guys. We're not going to achieve the kind of names and stories that they want on their side. We're not going to achieve a change with their narrative in inspiration porn. No, thank you. I'm going to move on now to what exactly are the aims of people who are fighting for disability. Right. So they talked a lot about infrastructure. We admit that that is a big thing that we want to change as well. But we think that after implementing, for example, the ADA, after it's implemented, we want to see a far more wide acceptance of these policies. What we want to really create is an acceptance of these people as normal human beings in our society, able to achieve what we all are able to achieve to the same degree as we all are able to do. And that's important, because the only way we can actually have people be willing to build lives for a disabled person rather than grumble and say, thank you, sir, why didn't we just hire someone who is able, is for them to be seen as people who are equal parts of society, not someone who is fetishized and differentiated. So how exactly do we see the disabled people with inspiration porn? They're defined by their disability, no response to artist material. Right here, we talked about the nature of inspiration. So what exactly do we want to see on the comparative? Let me give you an example. For example, in the recent Paralympics, the 4x200 meter sprints, the disabled group actually beat the timing of the gold medal winners in the current Olympics that we see. And these are stories that we can promote online, so thank you. Defined by the disabled rights movement, we don't necessarily think we need to go to the base level of inspiration porn and try to appeal to these base levels of individuals on social media. Second, we talk about how they're objectified, the nature of social media, how you use them as a tool, as a means perhaps to promote your corporate social responsibility or your cause as a movement. We think this sort of objectification is something that is bad for disabled people, bad for many of them in the community who just want to be a part of the community like everyone else. Want to celebrate the best of them, not just people who achieve the most basic of things. Once again, no response coming from their side. We think this translates again, hold on a minute, sir, into how we react to these sorts of inspiration pop up. Before that, go ahead.
Even in your characterization of inspiration, Paul, how else are we going to convince people that it's their fault that they created a society in which disabled people cannot perform the most basic functions in society?
Well, guys, when you go online and you see an African kid starving, no one thinks I'm a member of a capitalist society and I created inequality. No one ever believes it's their fault. In fact, they're more likely to feel happy about themselves, more likely to think that they have done something after sharing a picture. And that's the problem with social media today, and that's the problem with inspiration porn. You never feel like you're guilty unless you provide us a solid mechanism, which you have not done in either of the opening speeches, how people feel immense guilt at their own creation of society that objectifies disabled people. We don't necessarily think that you have achieved your objectives. So what is the kind of discourse that we create? We talked about how they changed the dialogue away from treating them as equal members of society. And let's face it, even in their best case scenario, they don't create any sort of dialogue like they want to create. So think about it. If you watch a disabled person online, right, overcoming some of the most basic things like picking up a pen or going for a race, do you really then associate this with other policies like tactile signs and goals? You don't necessarily do, because that's not the focus of online inspiration porn. It's about trying to appeal to what is simple, trying to appeal to what is easy to understand on a visual level. Tactile signs are a little bit harder to understand. Braille readers are not something that comes immediately to people simply because they see inspiration porn. Once again, no mechanism as to why many of these things which currently are in society will be achieved, thank you, sir, by the time we move to that kind of dialogue. But we showed you a direct path. We showed you how this retroactive movement of the disability rights movement. And the reason for this is that they're now trying to get equal acceptance of them into society. We've already had legal protections like the ADA. We're trying to have this implemented across the board. And the only way we can do that is by recognizing as equal member of society. That's what Arthur brought to you, but absolutely no response. But a deeper level of this, the deeper level is that at the point at which we allow inspiration porn to permeate into society, allow it to become a norm, then we are likely to see disabled people as subhuman. We're likely to see them merely as images on the screen, people to appreciate on a day-to-day basis without understanding their real stories and the real inspiration within these communities. And that's the problem. Because at one point, when you see so much inspiration porn online, you get inundated with this sort of information. You're unwilling to actually go and interact with people who are disabled because you think you know enough. You're unwilling to find out about these stories because you think you know enough. You think you have clicked share. That's the problem with social media activism. That it stops you from going and doing a lot more. It stops you from actually appreciating the people who need the Braille readers, the people who need that sort of tactile sign. We think that retrograde movements towards the infrastructure in their world, we think in our world also retrograde movements with equal acceptance to them because we see them as different. If they can be merely replaced by pets in posters with quotes, we don't think that at all creates change for the civil rights movement, who stand firmly in opening opposition.
Thank you, and now in the closing part, we have the
You know, as humans, we always love a good story. Lies that tell a deeper truth. And the problem with the story that opening opposition presents is that it's no story at all. Because let's look at what the only example I've gotten, so I'm debating against some shadow opponents, I don't know what to stand for, of one thing, of one portrayal of disabled people that they would accept. The 4 times 200 meters relay, where they outran, set up the timing in the regular Olympics. Now, this is problematic. Firstly, the message you're selling, if you're only willing to show these stories of disabled people, is you're measuring them by able standards. Their achievements are only worth recognizing
but they beat the able people on the able people's terms. It's really strange. These guys are saying let these disabled people, live by their own standards rather than someone else's. There's no focus on the important needs of everyday runners who presumably do not have the millions of dollars for training and equipment to equip carbon fiber or Kevlar plates to their stumps of legs and run like the wind. But also, think about what these guys actually get when you shoot a film or a promo about that race. Because at a point of a news report, when we're engaging purely with text, then yeah, it's cut and dried, Some guys, they ran very fast, and they ran faster than some other guys. But at the point at which you shoot that film or promo, if you don't focus on those plates on the legs, if you don't focus on the fact that it's disabled, it's just a bunch of 4x200 guys running, right? Like, why watch that? Why not watch Bolt? Why not watch, the American 4x200 relay team? Why watch them at all? The story you have to tell about the disabled people is that they're disabled, because if they're not, they're utterly unremarkable. Right? They're utterly unremarkable, and there's no story to be told, because you need the story in the first place to get a recognition of the disabled rights campaign and why they matter and why we can do things to help them. These guys abandoned the story. Okay, one bit of clarification before I get on to my speech, where I'm going to deal with the mechanism of the image and how that works in this debate, and I add some sophistication to the analysis we get out of opening government about able and disabled and how we come to that cause. Right. So one thing I just want to get out of the way, I'm going to accept in this debate, hopefully, that we are all trying to achieve the same sort of goal, which is to say a degree of greater integration for the disabled into able society, rather than a possible, alternate alternative, where some disabled groups say, well, we kind of just want to live on our own terms. We don't really care about, say, having that many more like wheelchair access or hiring in areas where we have to live by the rules of the able, understanding as that the entire world is built on the rules of the able and we just want to do our own thing. Why is that? Well, basically, I think we're all human, we're all socialized to be human, we want to be integrated into something bigger than ourselves, and disabled people either are born into communities which aren't entirely disabled or turn from being able to being disabled, which is to say they suffer a serious accident and so on and so forth. All of this points that there's a significant number of people who want to integrate into wider able society, and I think that's the broader goal of this debate. So unless CEO wants to come up and say we only care about people who live amongst themselves, I don't think that's really relevant, but I don't think the two groups are rival, before I go on.
Who defines who is disabled and not in a society?
Oh, right. Of course it's the able. That's the nature of the image. The point here is you can't, and this is what I'm going to talk about in my first kind of, pre-substantive material, is about the mechanism of the image. And the key to note here is, in text, you can say whatever you want. I mean, it's still context-laden. Words, the meanings of words are, defined by what we understand them to be, but especially in terms of the image, right? Filmic convention to focus on a person's disability through the lens of a photo or a moving image, a video, people have those connotations of what it means to be a disabled person. That's how we tell stories in film. If not, there will be no shared medium, by which we could communicate one idea to another, right? So these guys say, who defines that idea? Well, society has defined ideas. Society is able, no thank you. Then that's what the idea looks like. Why does that work for InSpawn? I think the first thing to note here is that it means that the vast majority of, in fact, I literally can't conceive of a video of a disabled person, a video highlighting some kind of disability rights concern without it being InSpawn on some level. Which is to say, if you show that image of, say, a guy sprinting, and then you cut away to show that he's not running on legs, he's running on stumps, you're already highlighting his disability. And you're already saying that this is something that we ought to celebrate, that the fact that a guy who's disabled can run is something that's normal and something that's worth celebrating. So my point is that almost all, I literally cannot conceive of any video portrayal of the disabled without it being inspiration porn on some level. The pertinent opposition, the alternative they have, is only reporting by text, appealing to people's sense of guilt, saying we have done something wrong for disabled people, we can't celebrate their achievements in any way, and we just help them because we've built a society that's disamenable to them. So that's important. How does this image work in terms of promoting this juxtaposition of image work in terms of promoting disabled rights? Firstly, it juxtaposes ability and disability. It links, surprisingly, the able stuff, right? So being able to write, being able to generate a great novel or be a great lawyer and so on and so forth, the disabled stuff. And it connects it to in a way that words don't. Because your mind makes that connection on a subconscious level. You're not just reading the text of the video, you're reading the subtext of the video. And it's not just that the two are connected, it's something else very important. And that is the idea that you have a positive association about these people that works on a subconscious level. Why is that important? Because we make judgments in the same way we make sensory perception, which is to say, on a very non-conscious fashion. We don't consciously think, I ought to be guilty, or I ought to have a moral duty to help others. Let's get real. One, no one really thinks of a moral duty to help others. Two, we don't really see disabled people as subhuman. We see them as human, but the truth is that we don't really care. You're out of time, sorry. We don't really care about other humans all that much, which is why we aren't motivated to help others simply by seeing images of their suffering. But what we do get on a subtextual, subconscious level is we positively associate these disabled persons with I guess, what they can do, and so on and so forth. What does that do? Firstly, it gives visibility. This is not just you don't see these people around you. It's an inability to empathize with others' experiences outside your own headspace and experience. Video and image hack that. They give you the most direct ability to access someone else's story in a way that text doesn't. So that's important. It gives you the visibility you don't get. But secondly, these positive associations build general acceptance, not just in terms of the direct information-driven campaigns that opening government talks about, but the positive association of seeing a disabled person in a good light builds that association in terms of promoting that campaign. So say, if you show a bunch of disabled people using lifts to be able to get to where they are, that's a positive association that makes people more likely in their sensory-driven judgments to empathize and support those causes. But lastly, and I'm going to try to do this in 30 seconds, for disabled people themselves, because many of these disabled people are lonely. There's a lack of community. You're not born into a community of other people like you, which means seeing in sport is really important because you now think that you can overcome the injury to yourself that happens when you are disabled. An injury, a disability, is an injury to who you are as a person. You have to reframe who you are, and seeing examples of that in inspiration porn is crucial. Very, very proud of this.
Thanks, and now the audition member.
From here, we're going to do two very simple things to win us to debate. First of all, clarify exactly what the comparative is and point out how disingenuous CG's burden push on us is. Second of all, to talk about why the idea of the construction of what we think is a good thing for those individuals who are disabled, even if we accept the best case scenario from gospel, is we can still win because we posit to you that inspiration porn changes and shapes the way policy making works in a way that focuses on an end, on the welfare of the disabled, as opposed to granting them liberties and expanding the right set of them. Because the way we imagine the good and what is valuable for the disabled is changed by inspiration porn. Because when it emphasizes the infrequency and rarity of how these inspirational disabled people emerge, that is when we go like, fuck that impact investment. Most people aren't going to be able to work on the same level as us non-disabled individuals are. That's when we turn to things like welfare and ends-driven things that are ultimately not beneficial towards expanding the agency. I'm going to talk about two things. First, in terms of political capital. Second of all, in terms of conception of the end and a goal. Let's start with CG's material about humanization and the idea of visibility. The first thing to note here is it is not our burden to say we don't support non-visible things. We're perfectly happy to say that there are visible campaigns or visible presence in various ways. Number one, because disabled people can do things that are equally inspirational even by non-disabled standards, right? Because Paralympics is not just the fact that these people are inspirational within the context of a disability, but they are in general, by our standards, also very inspirational. If you watch Paralympics, you would recognize a lot of the things they do when they sit down and fence, for example, are not things that ordinary people could do, right? Or non-disabled people could do, right? Because disabled wheelchair fencers can do things better than non-disabled people. We posit to you there for the salience you get is equal. Second of all, we're perfectly happy with reporting on extraordinary or not even ordinary things by saying that there is an existence and in all the audio and visual detail you want to have, right? The emphasis, however, and the distinction between us here is we don't fetishize it. We don't say, it is because they're disabled, this is inspirational. It is because of the act that they perform as a normal, ordinary human being that makes them inspirational. So we don't make the source of inspiration an identity-based one, we make it an ordinary one, we generate and we posit that a salience is largely marginal if we get any more on your side. But second of all, the rebuttal here is, even if you get more attention, right, it doesn't translate to better conditions for disabled people for two reasons. One, recognize the ongoing trend of the people who are backlashing against the check your privilege movement, CF people who believe that turning or transforming individuals into special snowflakes and playing identity politics card is not the way to go forward in liberalism. We're talking about not only people on the conservative right or the moderate right, we're also talking about a lot of centrist liberals who are sick of fucking Jeremy Corbyn's identity politics because they believe that as non-representative of how we empower individuals. You turn individuals away because you effectively present a fetishization that they find too extraordinary and unacceptable, right? Because you're emphasizing things they believe is not actually in a dignity or it's very denigrating for the disabled people trying to help you. Second of all, recognize that empathy, right? Recognize requires resonance. So I can't empathize with an alien because I don't know or I believe that I can't understand how aliens work. Inspirational porn operates on the basis that I can't, as a non-disabled person or an able person, understand how difficult it is for these individuals. It's inspirational because it is foreign, it's alien, and far away and detached from what my ordinary conception of my ability is. Therefore, that means it's very hard for me to empathize with people. I can't empathize with a really good sportsman or a really good fencer for very simple reasons, because they fundamentally have differences from me that I'm told I cannot comprehend or cross-deny. But recognize, and the second thing we said is positive connotation. Look, three responses here. The way connotations work, right, is, and this is also substantive material, you construct a positive connotation about an individual being inspirational by denigrating and conceptualizing the collective that the individual is detached and distinct from as non-inspirational. For inspiration to work, you require three things. One, a uniqueness argument, that these people are the odd ones out, right? You wouldn't find someone inspirational with 100 billion other people of the same sort and do exactly the same thing. The way we generate the perceived value and inspirationality of something is always say, most other people can't do it, that's what makes it inspirational. But second of all, recognize the way I connote or create connotations when I watch something is I often create it based on the individual centric, right? So that's when I watch an athlete, I don't fundamentally remember like black people as being really good sportsmen. I remember that particular name, like Jesse Jackson or that particular athlete, and say this unique attribute and ability is connoted and associated with that individual and not the group. And why is that a tendency? Because we say that the way we conceptualize uniqueness is ultimately a praise for the individual, that we find an individual inspirational, but not an entire race or collective group of that person inspirational. Because what is important here is that inspirationality is a scarce resource that we allocate on a basis of how scarce or rare something is, right? D9. But notice here that there's also links on how we define and conceptualize what is good, right? Because if I'm an independent investor and lobby here, on a probabilistic calculus, what they're effectively saying is it is inspirational because it is extraordinary. And 99% of other people within that particular subset or group are unlikely to ever have the same level of competence or ability as they have. We say, on the other hand, what we do by actively rejecting it as movements to say that's not true, that it is not inspirational because many other people on a probabilistic and frequency-based level can do lots of these things. And you might say that, oh, no, that's not true. But we say it is true. D9. Why is it true? It is true because for an individual who might be depressed or have implicit disability, that doesn't necessarily prevent them from existing or living in exactly the same ways or performing exactly the same activities as those non-disabled individuals can do, right? If you have orders and disorders that you don't fundamentally think affect you, these are the individuals that want to be seen as acting and fundamentally operating in a non-disabled way. How does that affect actual policy direction, right? We say that when I believe it is so rare and difficult for someone to improve and enhance their liberties in a way to become a non-disabled human being, that is when I'm going to focus more on things like welfare payments, immediate cash outs, and direct transfers of goods, because it is so difficult for them to perform, in my imagination, as a non-disabled person would do. But a comparator we offer to you, and a very reason why legislation for work rights, for workers' conditions, and support in terms of education, scholarships, etc., and normalizing schemes that have been done and carried over the past 30 years or so, is precisely because we think that these people could eventually have the same capacity set as us too, that it is not rare or infrequent for them to become just as non-disabled or payable as a non-disabled individual. That is where policy lobbying and political lobbying operates in a way that focuses on expanding the agency of that individual, as opposed to necessarily cashing out or giving them direct goods and transfers. And because we've proven to you the impacts today, and also shown that even if you get some more salience we get far better outcomes on our side. I'm so proud of us.
I still don't think they have a clear idea of what exactly inspiration porn looks like. Because if you listen to what CEO was telling you, it seems to me that the way that they think of inspirational porn is that you're only focusing again on the most exceptional kinds of people that exist within those communities. That is not true. We tell you that the way that inspiration porn works is precisely as a tool in order to gain the support from the rest of society by highlighting the fact that there are thousands of people on the ground that face the same issues that you see within the inspiration porn video. So oftentimes the way that it works is that yes, in the beginning, it seems to highlight the fact that these people are inspirational. It seems to tell you that the individual that's trying hard to walk without legs, for instance, is someone who's able to surmount huge difficulties in order to live like an able individual. But in the later half of the video, oftentimes what they do is reveal the fact that this person is not an exception. This person is inspirational because they're able to surmount difficulties, but it's a difficulty that thousands of people around the world with the exact same disability or something similar to their disability have to surmount as well. So we don't agree with their characterization. The inspiration porn necessitates the fact that these people are 1 in a million, but rather shows or uses like videos and uses general communication techniques in the media to try and create empathy within you using the fact that you first believe that they're exceptional, but then realize that many people are exceptional in their way. Their counterfactual doesn't seem to exist because even on their side, they seem to continue to want to use things like text and words to try and convince people that these people are somehow inspirational by using the ways in which they're able to meet able standards, not recognizing the fact and just ignoring what Jan already told you about the fact that it's not possible for you to garner support based on the fact that these people are able to surmount able people's standards. Firstly, because that precisely lends itself to the problem that you're talking about, that these are the most exceptional of the disabled individuals, but also these are the most privileged of the disabled individuals, and you're not actually doing anything to help people in their day-to-day lives to try and actually like alleviate their problems and allow them to integrate back into their society. So we don't think that their side provides you any compelling alternative in the way they are trying to get these individuals to be able to integrate back into the society as a whole. Some other stuff that I want to deal with from their side of the house. Firstly, we think that they try to come up with some sort of idea that these people seem to be foreign and detached. That the idea of inspiration porn is the fact that you cannot empathize with them, and that's the reason why it doesn't work. But that just makes no sense. First of all, I think we can start off from like the non-controversial stuff that people see the disabled as people who are already different from them. The inspiration porn and what it does is it tries to show that the difference is not as vast as we would like to believe. So people oftentimes think that at the moment in which you are no longer an able individual, you do live an epistemically different life from the way that these people are able to live. The point of inspiration porn is to hack that particular metric and tell you that the difference between these two individuals is not something that's insurmountable. That via the metric or via like your ability to give them things like, for instance, like bionic legs or creating those ramps or doing those small investments that help these people, that difference is now no longer an insurmountable one, but one that is easily surmountable for these individuals to be able to live the normal life that they wanted to talk about the very nature of these videos, like Jan already told you, is to try and create the empathy in a point at which the empathy didn't exist in the past. And it's not enough for them to tell us that this means that you now satiate some sort of moral desire. Because individuals in general don't have an inherent moral desire to go out there and find something to do good for in the world. You must create those desires within them by trying to create that some empathy or some sort of feeling within them to create those good things. And here's where the feel-good sentiment actually becomes important in debate. Because the truth of the matter is that people don't respond to guilt in the way that you guys wanted to make them feel. People don't like be randomly apportioned guilt, to tell them things like, for example, this is definitely entirely your fault. You need to have that specific mechanism by showing them why this is something you can feel good about, feel pride, and find some sort of meaning in life by allowing other individuals to find their meaningful existence as well. So when you can correlate, for instance, the investment in that new lift or that new ramp, for instance, with the feel-good sentiment that you felt when you watch the inspirational porn video, that's what actually creates a positive change for these individuals to want to do something good for those individuals who are disabled on their side of the house. So we don't agree about being foreign and detached. It's about bridging that problem of them being foreign and detached as well. The next thing they wanted to argue to us was this idea of implicit disability. Now, take you in just a second. And it was a really strange and queer idea because they wanted to tell us that people with depression are now able to think as if they are a normal person and go through their day-to-day life. Like, okay, I'll do that in just a bit, but yes.
You support things like poverty or slum tourism, which objectifies the poor, but nevertheless do the same.
Right, so his problem here is objectification, right? So here's a couple of responses that I have to objectification. One, it's not necessarily a terrible thing, because what it's doing is presenting you an actual, very real reality of these individuals and the kind of struggles they actually have to face in a way that you didn't otherwise or were able to conceptualize of before. But the second thing that I want to talk about is that even if that was true, in the comparative, we think it's a pragmatic trade-off that we sort of have to make, because if you're a disabled individual, you sort of lack the resources and the ability to fight back against or like to create some sort of meaningful existence in a world in which the system is overwhelmingly one where you cannot actually access it. So to that end, even if we agree there's objectification in some sense, we think that objectification, the trade-off means a more meaningful existence for these people is one that we're willing to make. Because the comparative is that they live the same problems, the same disabilities, and the same hardships, but no one knows about it, and they continue to live that kind of life, and people still objectify them because they look different, and they are different, and they can't do the same thing. So back to this idea of implicit disabilities, I think there's a huge marked difference between this idea of depression and the idea that you are limbless or that you have some sort of physical disability that's different. People who have depression don't empathize and can't gain much inspiration from the fact that these people are able to do things they should seek other forms of help is a very different thing. The last thing I want to talk about is the idea or the characterization of how these people feel on their own. The reason why inspiration point is incredibly important is because it's incredibly important for a very large subset of the disabled population, i.e. handicapped individuals who were once able, but because of certain unfortunate accidents are now no longer as able as they were before. The difference is these individuals oftentimes feel an incredibly fractured sense of identity. The way that they live their life and everything they know to be true and the way to do things that are entirely unconscious, like walking for instance, is now something entirely foreign to them. This means that they now have to conceptualize the rest of their life in a wheelchair in a way that's different from how they were before. To these people, this is oftentimes an incredibly traumatic event that they require help going through. Inspiration porn hacks that by creating an outside narrative that allows an outside picture to be able to paint a narrative in which they can live a normal life, where they can go back to their previous existence, even if it's slightly altered. In other cases, these people who have had no access whatsoever found it difficult to recognize a life in which they could continue to live that meaningful existence, which provides positive benefits to them. We're happy to propose.
Thanks, and to conclude the debate is the opposition.
Madam Speaker, it's funny how throughout government bench they've tried to muddy this debate by really
trying to mess about with the definition of what inspiration porn really is. Like, if we go back to the info slide, it's the idea of inspiration porn is that you're depicting disabled people doing something ordinary, portraying it as inspiring. So all the things they talk about, like people doing triathlon, which ordinary people really don't do, is really not really in this debate. It's like, this is about people doing banal, and I think the opening opposition talked about this, banal and ordinary things, and exaggerating it to the point where these things become exceptional. They become inspirational, to the point where you say that these things are out of the ordinary and that we should take some kind of measure of inspiration from it, that if they can do it, why can't we? What will my speech be split into? First, I'll talk about closing government's extension, which is about giving more attention and resonance and like basically hacking people's minds. Second, I'll talk about our extension and why necessarily Shirmei's ignorance or non-engagement with that extension was problematic. But lastly, I'll talk a bit about the contribution that happened in opening half. We think that inside closing opposition, we think that we can focus on structural problems for all disabled people face without patronizing them, right? Like, we're okay with giving people opportunities, like providing the means through which they can compete fairly with everyone else, like, for example, having ramps and anti-discrimination laws, just like everyone else does. But what we're not okay with is a means through which we patronize them and tell them that we will give you the self-esteem that you cannot achieve by yourself. And we think that's really, really horrible. So what do we want, right? And this is something that closing government wanted to keep pushing at us. I told them, right? What we want, and this is important, this idea of what narrative is, because that's what closing government want to talk about, right? In the idea of what a narrative, what a story about the achievement of a person is, we don't want the disability to become front and center and the focus of that story. Like, we want it to be a postscript. Like, this person became president of America, and he happened to be disabled. I think that's very important here because these are exceptional things, and these are exceptional things for everyone else to achieve, but we don't think the disability is necessarily a part or necessary for you to get any kind of sympathy or political capital that you need to give the kind of help they need. I mean, I'll deal later with why opening government is really on this debate. Sit down. Let's first talk about closing government's extension. You want to tell you that, well, that anything is basically inspiration porn. Not really. Like, we think that there's a clear distinction here between stories that focus on people being able to achieve exceptional things, and then they only mention the disability. But I think it's ridiculous for you to then paint that every single depiction of disabled people doing exceptional things is in and of themselves inspiration porn. Like, they want to celebrate our response to that is, and this is something that Brian talked about, is that we would celebrate the act and not the disability. And I think that's very important here, because the moment you focus so much on the disability, that takes away attention and celebration from the act itself, and actually makes the act itself less inspirational. It focuses more on the person and their identity and generalizes that every other disabled person should be able to achieve it as well. Secondly, they say, well, this will lead to better conditions. Like, this will create the kind of sympathy that people will have. I think there's obviously many problems with this, because what they're essentially asking for is lowered expectations, and that we should treat everyone as a special sort of way. We should give them participation medals simply for being able to do what every other able-bodied person would do. We think that still haven't dealt with the idea of how tremendously insulting and diminishing to dignity it is to have that kind of stance towards these individuals. Secondly, they say, well, I mean, there was really no response to the idea of resonance, because Brian talked about this idea that the average person, even if they want inspiration porn, can't really associate themselves. They can pretend to imagine themselves not having legs, but they can never really understand what it's like to not have something anyway. So the kind of resonance you have doesn't exist. But lastly, is this idea of positive connotation. Like, obviously, we think that we would focus on the individual rather than the group. Like, we think that we should focus on the fact that this person was able to achieve something, right? Not focus on the disability. But secondly, we think the problem with generalizing is that you set unreasonable standards for everyone else. Like, if this person can do that thing, why aren't the rest of you able to do those ordinary things as well? And what it does is it diminishes the self-esteem of disabled people who are not able to achieve those very same peaks they very much talk about. Because if they seek to normalize that idea that these achievements should be normal, and that we should that these achievements are exceptional, but also every other disabled person should be able to achieve it, then obviously it sets those kind of standards. Before I move on, opening.
Stories only make the news when they seem to be different from norm. We don't say, in today's news, nothing happened. If you don't show disabled people doing normal things, something that goes against most people's intuitions, how will your movement compete for space in the public media to change policies and raise funds?
So can I just point out very quickly, right, that opening government has really been overblowing this debate, right? We've achieved a lot of things like increased, like, building of office spaces to be more disabled friendly. We've had all these kind of things about anti-discrimination laws without inspiration porn. Like, there is little utility to having inspiration porn, but even if, and this is me dealing very quickly with opening government, even if you have political capital, you're doing it at the cost of the individual dignity of those disabled people that you seek to kind of help. And we think that's just tremendously problematic. Even if you achieve some kind of political capital, which we don't think will happen, we think that it comes at the cost of diminishing the ability, the agency and the empowerment of those disabled individuals. So that actually segues into what extension was and why it was especially important in this debate. Because the disabled rights movement focuses more on providing opportunities. Like, their goal is really to have twofold. One is to have more opportunities available to the disabled to be able to function like as any other person would. But secondly, is the recognition that disabled people have empowerment and agency as well, which is to say that there should not be undue state influence, or you shouldn't try to be like talking down to them, right? You shouldn't be telling them that, hey, you know, like, we think you can't achieve this kind of self-esteem, like we think you can't feel good about yourself. We should encourage this kind of inspiration so that you feel inspired, so that other people feel inspired. Because that's what they're saying. They're saying that these individuals or these disabled people aren't able to have the kind of self-esteem, don't have the courage, don't have the ability to withstand those kind of struggles, and they need this kind of inspiration to feel good about themselves. What does that do? And this is something that Shirmei really didn't deal with. What it does is that it focuses a lot of state attention on things like welfare. So ends-based health. What does that do? Like things like welfare, like giving them money. Like, what's the point in providing wheelchair ramps for them to work if we can just give them welfare so that you don't have to work? Like, that's really what happens here, because the kind of sympathy they talk about, even if it's guarded, is focused more on helping them like have a basic living rather than giving them opportunities for them to work. What does that do? One, it denies them agency. It denies them the ability to recognize that they are able to take opportunities. So the idea then that closing opposition is for is that, look, we'll give you opportunities, but it's up to you to decide how much or how willing you are to achieve those very ends. So at the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen, we want the disabled to feel empowered, and we don't think we need to talk down to them for the disabled rights movement to forward their cause. Proud to close.
Thanks everyone. This is a silent round, so take leads off.
Thank you. Thanks. Take our stuff.